Hi folks, welcome back to Lonely Horde Guitars. Today we're going to talk about these side tone bars. Sometimes I hear them called radius bracing, sometimes I hear them called side struts, but whatever you call them, these little braces that go sort of off the X bracing on these little pockets here. So I already did this spruce top, got it just to show you where we're going to end up. We are going to do the sinker spruce top, same thing. We're going to build our braces. I've got some material here that I prepared earlier. It's 1/4 by 1/4, quarter sawn. We will cut our braces, shape them, glue them in. So let's get down to what we need to do first. So I use spacers here so that I get a consistent spacing, and I run them parallel to the X-brace. So this isn't a 90 degree. We need to figure out what that is so that we can get like a clean bump up against the tone bar. So we'll use this handy little angle finder, and we are at 82.6. So we're gonna, on the miter saw, cut these so that they come in perfectly. Over at the miter saw, we need to figure out what our angle is, so we needed 82.6. This is 90 degrees. What do we subtract from 90 degrees to get 82.6? 7.4. So we've got that set. We've got our strut here set up so that the grain is up, so that our quarter sawn grain is like this when we cut. We've got a little bit of a backer here so that we don't get any tear out. Let's go ahead and make our cut. Now we have a nice 82.6 degree cut. Back at the top, we can see this bumps in nicely to our tone bar here. What we want to do is go ahead and let's cut out all the ones that we need. So we need to chop about here. And then we'll come in and we'll cut this one. And then we'll do the other two. Same deal. So I will do this mostly off camera, and we'll come back to it. All right, we've got everything cut out from the miter saw, got all our blanks appropriately lengthed, and with a bevel edge here to, or not bevel, but angled edge here to hit on the tone bar nice and flat. So the next thing I do is I pick the peak, and I run the peak basically at the halfway mark on the little tone bar. So I've got an outline here where the body is going to end approximately. This is not super precise. So in this case, it's about 4 3/4, so that gives us about 2 3/8. And then I'll put a little arrow to indicate which end of the bar is going into the X bracing. 4 1/2, 2 1/4. And then same thing on the other side. All right, now each one of these needs a radius on the bottom. So I use this little radiusing tool. You can do it on your radius dish too, assuming you've got one, which you should if you're doing these kinds of things. I just do a little squiggle on the bottom so I know that it's where I've sanded off. And I have done videos for the larger braces. I have a jig that allows me to do the radius on the router table, but these go so quick. It doesn't take but a few moments to put a radius on these. Almost done already. Yeah. And we're clean. So that one's ready to go. Rinse and repeat. Everything's radiused, and we're almost ready to glue the first brace on. Now, I like to have as much meat on the wood when I'm doing the gluing so that I have a good clamp, nice stiff clamp. But when I want to carve this later, if I don't shave this one off first, I'm going to be running chisel into my existing X bracing. So this side definitely needs to be shaped before it gets glued on. The other side I will leave full size. So pretty straightforward. We clamp. I like to use a wide chisel when doing these kinds of cuts because then I less chance of sliding off. And then we just go in and give ourselves a nice taper to, I guess, about 330 seconds, maybe a little bit less. The opposite side gets feathered to almost nothing, but this side, and that looks pretty good. Now we will hit it with a little sandpaper just to make sure it's nice and smooth. And this guy is ready to be glued in. And we're gonna just apply a little smear. We've got our spacer here, so we know exactly where we want to go. Try and push that in as far as you can. Clamps at the ready. Now the clamp may try and pull it out, so you want to be careful when applying pressure and watch for that. Camera just a little bit. All right, and we'll let that sit. While that's drying, let's go ahead and carve our second one. So this is why I put the arrow here, so I know which direction to make that taper. And this guy's ready to go. So we'll give this a couple more minutes and then we'll take him off. First one is ready to remove. It doesn't take long for these little parts to adhere. And then we do want to run, I actually got quite a bit more glue than I really needed on this one. Run a chisel along here and get rid of that extra glue. At this point in time, it's just kind of a sticky ball, so it doesn't go into the grain very much and leaves you a nice clean edge. All right. Get a different spacer. That first gap's a little bit bigger. This is where we're going to do basically the same thing we did before. We're going to glue, we're going to clamp. Sometimes on these shorter ones I don't need to do 2 of these deep clamps. But let's go ahead and take care of that. And this one you can see is trying to pull it out, so we just give it a little extra shove and then a little more care next time we try and clamp. Again, while this one's gluing, let's go ahead and do our tapers on these. So both our tone bars are glued on this side. These are now profiled, so they are ready to glue on. And so we're going to go ahead and do that with this, and then that will kind of show also why I do them in this order. So I do the right hand side first and then left hand side, because since I'm right-handed, I can then go and carve this while this is sitting there drying. So now I have access to these guys, and then I can go ahead and shape them while the other side is drying. Again, I use a wider chisel for doing these kinds of cuts because if I start to slide in either direction, I've got a lot more surface area to keep me on this instead of like gouging into my top. First couple of cuts are kind of big and ugly, but then when you get down here, you're doing pretty fine stuff. This wants to be just about as thin as you can get it. Then I use a smaller chisel with a little bit more control to do these peaks. And then we just sand it up, being careful not to scrape across the top. So you do want your rough material to be in pretty smooth shape so that you don't have to get all the way down to the edge. I just basically sort of do the rough cleanup with 150 and then 220 for the final. Does not take much work on these little side guys. So at this time, we're probably ready to unclamp on the other side. And we'll go ahead and glue that up, shape it, and then we're ready to go. Now we got our braces on. Basically, the only thing left here is we need to do a little bit of bracing around the sound hole, and then we need to do the bridge plate. Then this top is ready to glue on. If this is the kind of content you like, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.